So, should people be borrowing for these houses? Why do we want people to borrow? It's because the money supply has been contracting, and this is a major part of the problem at the moment. Because people haven't been borrowing, the private sector hasn't been borrowing, whether for mortgages or for anything else, and it doesn't really matter whether that's because the banks aren't lending or people aren't prepared to borrow. One measure of the money, all the measures of the money supply have been contracting, but I'm looking at M1 here. M1 is cash and the amount that people have in their bank accounts to which they have immediate access. So this is the sort of money that you're keeping around for paying bills as they fall due. If you've got a surplus, you tuck it away into some other interest-bearing account. And so you can see that at its worst, last November, the amount of money in circulation had fallen by 14% from the level that it was in the previous November. The fall has moderated now, but overall we're about 17% below the peak of the boom. Now this is just like taking chairs away in a game of musical chairs. You're taking away the money that's circulating around the system. This is making it progressively difficult for firms to pay their bills as they fall due, to maintain their workforce, to order things as they would wish, and particularly to pay their debts to the banks. So people are losing their jobs. They are, in turn, finding it more and more difficult to pay on time. And so the whole economy is sludging up. And if these losses still continue, then things are going to get worse and worse. And this will impact on the banking system, because there's going to be an increased amount of bad debt. And as the banks are now guaranteed, that will immediately be off the public. It will be a bill that the taxpayer has to meet at some stage. So it's completely mistaken just to look at the government's budget and say, we're not getting the taxes in, we need to cut. If they cut, if they force the money supply down because they are not borrowing and nobody else is borrowing, then the bad debt experience, the amount of that they're going to get in, will grow. It's a very short-term thing. They say that it's not sustainable to continue to borrow. True, it's not. Nothing is sustainable in the long term. What the real question is, can they sustain borrowing until something else has been worked out? They shouldn't cut now, because that will just make things very much worse. So NAMA, in my view, isn't going to help at all. In fact, it's going to cause the crisis to continue. If we need to get people borrowing again, if we need to get a working property market, we need to remove the overhang of vacant properties around the country that we're going to be paying for in one way or another. So, much to my surprise, I reject the NAMA approach, because what it involves is essentially selling houses and other properties into intervention. It's a way of keeping them off the market and trying to maintain higher prices. Why? Well, it's to protect the bank's balance sheets. I think we need to be completely honest about this. We've got a surplus of property. So the price of property needs to fall until the market can clear at that price. And we have to take the consequences of that, because how is NAMA going to be able to manage properties all over the country? It's going to, while it still has them, there's not going to be any incentive for people to borrow again. Who's going to look after these properties, ensure that they're maintained, they're not vandalised? Let's get them onto the market so that people can, in fact, use them. It's going to cause all property prices to fall. But isn't that a positive thing as far as the country is concerned? Money that is tied up in property is essentially dead money. We want it to be cheap for people to live, so that wages don't have to be so high, so that businesses aren't paying such high rents on premises, so that shops aren't driven out of business. We've got to try and bring down our whole cost structure, because we can't do it by inflation anymore and then devalue. We've lost the devaluing tool. So what we're trying to do is to do what Japan did and is criticised for doing. We're trying to avoid taking write-downs by ring-fencing the property that NAMA will take over and having it trickle it onto the market in future years. Let's admit the situation, let's get prices down, but let's arrange the banking system so that people can buy these distressed assets themselves. So rather than giving the money to NAMA to buy and hold, let's give the money to people who may wish to buy these properties at a very much lower level. So my suggestion does have some similarities with that of Fine Gael. I think we need to, for each bank, we need to create a good bank and a bad bank. So we need to move all the deposits to the good bank and take over liabilities to match those deposits. And the liabilities would be the accounts that we all have there. So the sums that people have on deposit would be matched by the best loans that the banks have. And the rest would be left with the bad bank for the shareholders and the bondholders to sort out. Now, they can be given some sort of interest in the new bank if you feel that's desirable. And then you would capitalise the new bank so as the property market worked, so that people were able to buy at the new level. We need to get to that new floor level as soon as we can. So property prices and rents would drop sharply. People would be confident that the worst was over, because otherwise this is going to drag on for years. And living and business costs would be cut. But we get to the turnaround point more quickly than in any other way. And this is basically what the approach that Iceland has been taking. So, no, let's get the market working. Asset values are going to fall anyway as incomes fall. They're going to fall a lot. Let's get to that new level, and start building up from there. Thank you.